Yeah, I'm SteveCC. I'll be hosting this class. I've done a bunch of these and teaching folks racing. So yeah, I guess one way to do it is we could just go around in alphabetical order, top to bottom in the voice list. If you could just say your handle, what your like experience level is with racing, what your control scheme is, and then what your goal is for the class. I know it's a lot of things, but just control scheme and goal definitely helps me kind of tune the class. Yeah, start with you, Black.
I wasn't paying attention. Hi, I'm Black Mace.
Handle, control scheme, and goal for the class.
Hi, I'm Black Mace. I race with 2 Verpals, and my goal is to have a spectate.
Cool. All right. And Ziglizoot.
Oh yeah, I just changed my name to be my handle, so I instantly shot up the list.
Cheating.
It's the best way to race. I'm Zizu. I fly Hosas with 2 VKB Gladiators, and I'm basically just wanting to learn how to actually race without dying all the time.
Well, the learning to race part, we got you. The not dying, I don't even know if Steve can teach that.
Yeah, exercise for the reader. Awesome, good to hear. Kill Redbeard.
Yeah, handle is Kill Redbeard. I race with double Whirlpool and VKB pedals, and Toby, I guess. And I just got into racing like 1.5 months ago, so I'm just trying to improve on every little corner I can. That's why I'm participating here.
Nice, man.
Good to hear it.
Yesterday was my first event, what's it called? Scarlet Apex.
Ah, nice.
Hey, that's awesome.
How was that?
I placed 3rd place in the duo.
Nice.
Nice job, man. I did not get to watch that when it was at 6 a.m. here, but congrats.
All right, and then Lagos Niera.
Yeah, so I'm Lagos Niera. I race with Hosam, VKB Gladiator in left, and there's some random mouse in on the right. So yeah, I'm starting to become an experienced racer, but I'm just starting, and I'm coming in to have a check on my basics because I haven't really worked on those since a few months, and I don't feel like I'll actually pick to the next level if I don't do that.
Lagos is one of the fastest people in XGR events right now. He's being humble, but he still wants to come to racing school and brush up on his skills. So take note. Take note.
System as well. Yeah, Lagos definitely fast and consistent. And Hosam, that's.
I don't feel like I'll stay the fastest for long if I start acting like the fastest. So you know.
I know, I need to point the finger.
Good to hear. And then we go all the way down to the bottom of the list, Saber.
Yes, and not to forget Jork after me, who just joined. So hi, I'm Saber. My experience level is washed up. I'm flying chair-mounted Hosas with pedals, and I manage a racing team. So I kind of hang out and do racing support stuff a lot. And I like to always go to racing school whenever possible because it kind of lets you see what's up with the community and then see like what people are excited about, what's getting people to join XGR. I like that. Jork, you're up.
Hey, how's it going? I'm on the other side of the planet in Australia, so I'll join any event when I can, especially racing school, because I love it. Hosas, 2 VKB gladiators, Omni on the left, and that's it. And yeah, I've been to a few racing schools, and I'm almost getting what I would call competent racing, but there's a long way to go.
For sure. I know there's definitely always stuff to learn. I know
Yeah.
I'm always picking up stuff from other people because I wish I had more time to do laps than I do. So it's always inspiring watching people just completely, just blaze and be fast. Well, awesome.
Oh, that's great. I'll be bored when there's no more people to learn from. So.
For sure. All right, and then last I'll do myself. I'm SteveCC, fly dual VKBs. Been racing with these folks for, probably a couple years now. And then I just enjoy, talking about racing and learning from students as well, and answering questions and thinking about things from a different perspective. Jumping forward. So we'll be running this class in Arena Commander, which is awesome. So any of the exercises and everything, you can happily just blow up and don't need to worry about respawning. That's when we used to run the class PU. One small housekeeping rules. It's okay to just leave early, whatever. Don't worry about that. Just please don't use the soundboard, just because that can make it hard for other folks to hear things. And I'll be recording the class to help throw some clips or inspire future students. And then, as Black Knight said, it's being streamed to Twitch. So let me know if there's an issue with either of those. Let's see. So we're going to do basically a classroom portion. We're going to go over some topics with visuals and do some demonstrations in game. And then we'll do exercises in basically Free Flight Arena Commander. So probably the best way to do it is if you can stream your POV on Discord, then I'll be able to essentially look over your shoulder and see how you're doing for the different exercises. Let's see, and then we'll, just the goal is to kind of give you tools and techniques and kind of help skill you up so you can, practice on your own and prepare you for races and kind of get you to that next level. Do you guys any questions about that? All right, then let's jump into. Here's my timer. All right, let's jump into racing. So one of the things about racing, or in Star Citizen, there's many different types of flying, right? There's all right, many different types of racing, transportation, flying from place to place. There's racing, there's combat, there's camera work, formation flying. One of the things that makes racing a little different from other types of flying is that you don't really worry about where your nose is. So camera work or combat, you're trying to get your nose on target, right? So all of your maneuvers are trying to make the best of your aerodynamics and thrust, but also trying to get your nose on target, right? For racing, you're primarily just trying to get your thrusters oriented and your ship oriented for aerodynamics, so you can have the most efficient possible flight. So some of the techniques will apply to other types of flight, but other ones won't. For example, some of the racing maneuvers you're not necessarily going to apply in combat, just because in combat you're trying to get your nose and your guns on target. Why do I love racing? Well, there's the rush of a live race, the great feeling of nailing a time trial, but really to me it's all about continuous improvement. Racing is really, you have very little margin from error. You're pushing yourself and your ship to the limit, but because you're always tracking times, you really always have a bar to measure your performance against. That's what I really like about it is at the end of the day, you can tell if you are getting faster or slower just by looking at that time. And because Star Citizen is so complicated, it can be hard to judge your progress in other pursuits too. But yeah, it's definitely really all about seat time and practice. It will only ever get easier. It's definitely more difficult at the beginning. In terms of practicing and getting better at racing, there's a couple considerations that I've seen where it takes to become an expert at something, and especially in Arena Commander, we can make that environment Star Citizen. So what it is you have like a valid environment to practice. You can do many repetitions. You can get timely feedback, and you can do deliberate practice. If you do that a whole bunch, you can get better. And so, for example, what we have right now in Arena Commander, we've got timed laps. You can run the same tracks over and over. You can do it really fast as many times as you want, and it's an environment that you can race in. You can definitely scale up and get better. Let's see. In terms of controls, it seems like most people are dual stick. Really, one of the most important things is having more analog axes. So, for example, I know Lagos, you're doing Hosan, which is stick and mouse. So you've got 5 analog axes. Is there one of your axes actually that's digital, Lagos?
Yes, the only one that's digital is roll, and I have it on mouse on the mouse side buttons, and it's kind of a must. You can't have 4 axes on one hand, from what I tried.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. You got 3 on one and 3 on the other, and I know the roll rate is fast enough that probably.
It's actually a problem because the acceleration, the second you click, it's full input, so it tends to make the ship unstable, which makes it very hard for me to actually roll while I'm in a straight line and keeping the ship stable. So I'm actually doing sort of tricks that actually slow me down but keep me stable. So honestly, I wouldn't recommend it if you can avoid it.
It's interesting. We were watching Lagos race yesterday, of course, and I didn't realize you were using binary inputs for roll, but it makes sense now because I did notice that sometimes your rolling is kind of like a tap, tap, tap.
Yeah, that's exactly why. So I can roll, when I have long straights, I use some taps to prevent the instability from happening, because it will happen if I don't do it.
Makes sense, and your kind of nose will wiggle a little bit.
Yeah. It's going to be especially tough with the M50.
Oh yeah, the M50 likes to roll off nose. All right, but yeah, so 6 analog axis definitely gives you kind of the most control. And for example, the roll going from 0 to 200 degrees a second, a lot of these ships, sometimes you want to be smooth on the roll instead of having full digital. Let's see. So in terms of configuration, there's a couple settings that you all are probably using, but just to kind of go over them. And we do have a pre-flight guide pinned in Racing School that kind of has the settings, keybinds, ships and resources. But just a couple quick settings to just make sure you all have. Coupled mode is a toggle. G safe off. Speed limiter defaulting off. Proximity assists defaulting off. Space brake engaging boost no, so that you can use boost. And then coupled mode defaults on no. That's to if you are. I should ask about coupled decoupled flight. If you're new to decoupled flight, I find it's better to leave the default as off, just so that your brain doesn't need to worry if it's on or off. And then one of the more important ones, pilot velocity indicator always on. And as well, the VJoy visibility always visible. I like this, even though I use joysticks, but it gives you a visualization of what your pitch and your yaw input is. I'll go into coupled versus decoupled in a bit. Space brake engages boost is just so you can use space brake as a stabilizer without using your boost. Proximity assist is it kills your inputs when you're close to obstacles, or like halves your acceleration, and a lot of racing is close to obstacles. So this is it's a tricky one to know if it's on, but it will hurt your performance. Speed limiter, of course, does some wacky slowdown things if you ever lower it, and it can be kind of a bad habit to be thrusting at max with your speed limiter lower. So by having your speed limiter defaulting off, you can practice speed control on your own. G-Safe defaulting on. G-Safe also reduces your accelerations when it thinks you're about to black out, which can change your trajectory and smush you into something. And then coupled mode toggle, this just makes it a toggle on-off as opposed to a hold. Any questions about these?
Under resource, if I press racing guides, it is empty.
Yes. I've not. Yeah, I haven't. We haven't moved some of these over to that. If you go to the Racing School channel, and I can drop a link to this. If you go to threads, the pre-flight guide is there, and I'll actually just jump it in this voice here. But yeah, I dumped it in the voice 2 chat. In the process of migrating our racing guides over to the racing guide section. So.
There. Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, it's the threads and stuff are too hard to find. So hopefully when we get it over there, it'll definitely be easier to. All right, jumping over to controls. So talking about thrust, ships, aerodynamics, and flight. So here, let me jump into Arena Commander. See,
Free fall.
There we go. Free fall with my accelerometer all the way down. All right. So the way the current flight model is, and again, it will change, is ships have thrusters on all sides. So it can be a little tough to see, but arrays are having these very tiny thrusters. But you can see if I strafe down, you can see these thrusters on the top firing. If I strafe up, see there's thrusters on the bottom. If I strafe left, got those thrusters on the right firing. Vice versa, and then probably have retros somewhere. So the flight system is going to use combinations of these thrusters for every maneuver that you do. So for example, pitching, rolling, and yawing, the flight system is going to fire these thrusters to stabilize you and move you around. So for rotations, I guess you could call them, or the rotations are, I guess one term might be coupled. Basically, when you give a rotation input, you are setting a goal rotational velocity that you want to give the flight system, and then it will accelerate you until you reach that goal velocity with those thrusters. So for example, if I do max pitch input, at a certain point, you can see the thrusters are going to stop firing or stop firing as much. Again, in 0G, it wouldn't be doing it at all. But it'll try to get you to that rotation speed and sort of keep you there. So what that means is the flight system is controlling the rotational acceleration until you get up to speed. And then those thrusters are also used to strafe at the same time. So for example, if I'm strafing and then pitching, it's using those thrusters both for the same thing. Thrusters also, of course, the more thrust you use, the more fuel you'll burn. So if you're constantly thrusting like an atmosphere, you will drain your tank a lot faster than if you're just doing late 0G maneuvering. And the heavier you thrust, of course, it'll burn more fuel. Acceleration depends on your ship mass versus your thruster power. So for example, if you have a ship which is full of guns and if you have a ship which is, say, full of guns and it's heavier, you have the same thruster power, and then you strip all those guns off, you will actually have faster acceleration, even though your thrusters are the same speed. And then lastly, if I am thrusting, if I boost, of course, boost plays some cool boost effects, but what it does is it up to doubles your thrust in any direction for the duration while you're holding the boost down. Of course, if you believe it's F6, if you set power to engines, it will decrease the speed at which your boost drains, and it will also increase its recharge. So generally for racing, not always, but generally you want full powered engines to give you that fastest boost recharge. Yeah, let's talk about the G meter. If you're not familiar with it, this little meter in the lower right of your HUD shows your acceleration in G's. Of course, it's hard to zoom in at the same time, but so it shows the acceleration relative to your ship, not to the pilot. So for example, that includes acceleration, deceleration, whatnot. So for example, here, I'm kind of not moving, or the atmosphere is slowing me down. Let's see retros. All right, 0G. If I hold forward, I'm 7 Gs, and then that acceleration is dropping because the drag is essentially pushing against the ship, and I'm going to be accelerating slower and slower and slower. So the closer I get to my max speed, this acceleration is going to start dropping off and basically get close down to 0. And as that acceleration drops, the rate at which my speed goes up is going to drop. So essentially, it's much, much harder to get to that top speed the faster you're going. But if we remember boost, apparently my trigger is my scoreboard. Wacky configuration. If we apply boost, that can greatly increase our acceleration, and so that is going to basically let us get up to that top speed a lot faster. So for example, when I'm at 400 meters a second, I'm only at about 1 G of acceleration due to drag. But if I boost, I'm now getting 4 Gs of acceleration, right? So the boost really helps you get up to that. When you're at a slower speed, it can really help you get up to that top speed a lot faster in atmosphere because you're fighting drag. So looking at the G meter, the little red line shows the direction of acceleration. So for example, all the way forward is, let's see. Yeah, so all the way, if the line is pointing backwards, you're accelerating forward, and then vice versa for the other directions. And then in terms of the actual thrust, a great way to evaluate your ship is to thrust in directions individually, especially in space, and see what those accelerations are. And what you usually find is that forward thrust is the most powerful, followed by upward thrust, and then usually retros as well, and then left and right and down are usually less powerful. And it's best to evaluate those in 0 G so that you don't have to worry about the atmospheric resistance. All right, so in terms of any questions about that thrust and ships, etc. All right, going forward to aerodynamics. So one thing is, now I'm gonna put my landing gear down, or put my landing gear up. I'm accelerating downward, and my acceleration is now capping out. It's about 0 G, so I'm basically in free fall, right? And what you will notice, if I zoom out here, it's not as pronounced with the Razor, but you'll notice that as I fall, my nose is actually dropping. And that's because if you look at the Razor, there's kind of a basic aerodynamic model in the game, and the Razor has big wings on the back and tiny wings on the front. So what that means is the back of the ship is getting more torque from the drag, and it's causing me to nose down. So what that means is we can exploit those very same effects to essentially get free rotation. So all I'm doing right now is I'm strafing up, boosting. I'm just strafing up and boosting, right? And you can see my nose is going forward. I'm not pitching. Not pitching at all, but I'm getting essentially free pitch from the aerodynamics from the ship. But due to the aerodynamic shape, ships of course fly differently in different directions. You've probably noticed if you are going at high speeds and you try to yaw, the Razor actually being pretty forgiving about this. If you're going forward and do full yaw, the ship is probably going to start fighting you and bucking. And that's because you have this sort of weather vaning effect where as you rotate, the torque is then pushing on the opposite side of your ship, and it's causing you to go backwards. So most ships generally don't like to yaw. in atmosphere. And let's see. And then as well, stuff on your HUD. So another kind of little known thing of your HUD is, so this, well, out of bounds. But there are, you have your speed, of course, on screen. Sorry, I dropped my game audio. You got your speed on the left side of the screen, and your TVI shows the direction that you're going. Your ship is actually traveling, and your crosshair in the center is your nose direction. This line, of course, was the I forget what that was called. The velocity. It basically shows how much pitch and yaw I'm inputting. So the VJoy, I think. So you have that as if you have mouse controls, but you can also have that as a joystick if you turn it on. But yeah, this indicator in the lower left, the white dot shows the direction of your TVI kind of in any direction. So even if this little thing is off screen and you can't see it, if you don't have head tracking, not looking at it, and this is a tiny indicator, but you can look at this to sort of see where your vector indicator is. So for example, if my TVI is now above me, you can see the little white dot is above the red dot in the center. All right, so any questions about any of that? Thrust, direction, HUD.
I think we're all good.
All right, let's jump forward. So then last thing, of course, is that all ships are going to have a max speed in atmosphere, and that entirely depends on their aerodynamic shape. And again, things like landing gear don't matter. Aerodynamic shape, the amount of thrust that the thrusters output, and some sort of secret tuning that CIG has, which basically says what the coefficient of drag is of every ship. So that's why ship speeds in atmosphere can vary from patch to patch as CIG does tuning, and I'm pretty sure what they're doing is just changing essentially how much resistance to drag each ship has.
Question.
Shoot.
Landing gear with some ships that have wing configurations. I've been flying the Vanguard recently. Radically different behavior with the gear up and down, but I believe that's due to the wing configuration. Do the Merlin and Archimedes have the same thing?
Yes, they do, in fact.
Quite bad.
And so this is actually something, I'll just show this off real fast.
And to a much lesser or less problematic extent, the Mustang does change its flight performance. I think that's the only competition ship this would apply to. Oh, sorry, 72 is competition. The LX is different with its gear down and its wings folded, but right now it's better. The Fury.
Yeah, it happens to be better like that. Yeah, just showing this real fast. So our lovely P-72. So we're just gonna go in a straight line, see what our top speed is, roughly equal in altitude. We've got about 470, 480 at about this altitude. And one thing is, because the atmosphere thickness is different at every altitude, your top speed is going to be different. So with the wings up, I'm going to pitch up and strafe up and just keep my nose directly on the vector indicator. If you look over at the speed, you can see I'm at about 490. And if you look at the Gs, I'm pulling about 6 Gs. So you can't really see the turn rate. You can kind of, or because the turn rate is up there if you're watching the compass, but if you timed it, you'd be able to figure out what a 360 rotation would be. And then now if I put my landing gear down, you can see I now have less wing area. And so keeping nose exactly on TVI again. We are getting up to, climbing, yeah.
Looks like you're turning much slower, right?
That's
yeah,
atrocious.
so the Gs are about the same at 6 Gs, and the speed through my turn is a little higher at about 520, but it feels like the speed is a little lower. So basically,
your turn rate is
scientific.
greater, or like your radius, right? Slower.
Yeah, bigger radius.
So it's higher speed, bigger radius. So basically, because I'm getting less lift from the wings, I'm also getting less drag. So I'm going faster. The turn rate is slower. So then, yeah, see, let's drop this again.
How much faster, Steve?
Looked like, let's see, 490.
Versus like a 420 or something?
It was
520.
Yeah, 520.
520, sorry. That's small.
And this is with,
small.
yeah. But if you're trying to squeak out those extra like 20 meters a second.
Yeah, no, I'm sending some DMs about this.
But and again, not purely so. You really need to keep the same altitude because it varies between them. But yeah, it's basically a good thing to test for things that fold their wings because they will fly differently. You'll get less lift in turns and everything.
That was really interesting yesterday as well. We saw that during the cutter race that you were hosting, Steve, that people were trying to fly as high as possible because then the atmosphere was thinner.
Which does matter on the snake pit a little bit. One thing, and of course the yaw performance. Ooh, blackout there. And the yaw performance is a little different too. And as well, with the wings folded, you can actually roll a little faster in the P-72. So let's see, at high speed at like 450. And if I do fold those, you can see the roll performance is drastically lower with the gear up.
That makes a big difference.
Versus if
Is there there's a keybind, isn't there, where you can control the wing folding without raising or lowering the landing gear?
No, only for certain ships. So certain ships have it as like a configuration thing, and these ships which are older, or like the Arrow, for example, don't have that.
It's like 3 ships that do have that. It's rarer than it is not.
Copy that.
Quick question about the wings and how it performs in Atmo. If you go in a straight line to try to get that max speed, if you're horizontal to the ground, is there a difference between being like, I guess, rotated in a vertical angle or a horizontal angle?
So in terms of the wings being folded as well?
No, like how it works right now. So you have your, exactly, landing gear up, wings to get the maximum, like...
You just mean in general? No. It is not faster to run like a straight line drag race sideways versus right side up, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so how he flies right now, or if he would rotate like 90 degree, is there a difference except the part where your ship is dropping to the ground for obvious reasons?
Right. So one thing is that all ships have sort of different lift profiles, and the P-72 definitely gets a lot of lift. So one thing is the only flight input that I'm giving right now is thrust forward, and you can see my nose is just barely above the velocity indicator, right? But I'm not dropping. Or I guess I'm losing a little bit of altitude, but if I pitch up a bit, yeah, I can stabilize. So the P-72, and so there's no IFCS doing that, it's just lift from the wings. If I roll sideways, of course, the lift isn't countering gravity, and I think, I'm not really nosing up a bit when I do that. But yeah, it can matter in terms of your aerodynamic profile versus gravity a little bit. So for example, if I'm rolled this way, I would just need to be applying a little bit of side strafe to counter gravity, versus if I were this way, I'd be getting that kind of free lift. So it kind of matters the orientation of your ship affects where you kind of want the lift from your wings to go. And again, you get the lift by your nose just being a little bit above the TVI.
Yeah. But will a slight upstrafe to match your TVI and your crosshair, will that give you more G's, I guess, more acceleration power than if you
More
would
speed.
have to apply a side strafe?
No.
Uh,
It might be harder to keep the TVI perfect with one than the other, but what Steve is saying is that your TVI management and how good it is your top speed. And
Gotcha.
the roll orientation of the craft only affects the difficulty of maintaining that TVI management. So generally, you're going to roll oriented to your next turn being a pitch up maneuver, usually, and you're going to roll oriented to your next turn being a trichord maneuver, depending on the turn. So usually, you're going to be more worried about getting power in the upcoming turn than you are going to be about how your roll is affecting your top speed. For top speed in straights and things like that, you're worried about your TVI management, but just really perfecting it.
I think it's
Yeah,
an
and again,
interesting
because-
question. We noticed it yesterday again
great question.
at the snake pit, because some people were running their cutters level on the straights, and some were already flying 90 degrees banked on the straights for the next turn. And so, Steve mentioned, of course, it's like either you're using your laterals to stay horizontal and level, or you're using the aerodynamics of the wings. I think it's a great question about when you under which configuration are you faster. I think some of it might actually depend on the ship you're flying too.
Yeah, and it does.
Probably
So for
true.
example, here, like,
Agreed.
if I'm this is about the fastest rate that I can TVI follow, yawing laterally, right? So I'm going full forward, full lateral strafe, and just a smidge of up strafe.
Can you boost
and
it, Steve? Can you afterburner that? I just want to.
Right, so yeah, and this is just giving enough yaw to TVI follow, because if I give more yaw, of course, it bucks, right? So then, yeah, so giving it boost, of course, the thrusters are now better able to overcome the torque, right? So of course we're gonna black out here, but yeah, the turn rate being higher. But if then, yeah, we roll, the more powerful vertical thrusters plus the lift from the wings, I have basically, I want to say this is what the boosted yaw turning rate was if I'm just doing, strafe up and pitch up to TVI follow. Then of course if I boost, higher speed but also higher turn rate.
And TVI management is both top speed and acceleration, right, Steve? Like, I'm understanding that correctly. Like, if my TVI management is great, I will both reach high speeds quicker and push the top of those straightaways harder, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct. So if you want to think about it, imagine, so in flight they talk about like coordinated versus uncoordinated flight. I guess it roughly applies here, where if you think about it, you can call coordinated flight is the ship is basically, you are pointing the direction that you're flying, right? And so the cross section here, if you imagine we're looking at the ship and it's the wind going at the nose of the ship, it's the smallest possible cross section and the least possible drag. If we're, say, yawing or we're kind of off axis, this like cross section, like if we just did a geometric area thing, there's a lot more area and there's a lot more drag. And I think drag is geometric in proportion to the amount of area. It's basically nonlinear. So the more surface area you have, the more drag you're going to have. The physics model in Star Citizen, I know, is not like flight simulator levels, but what it does mean is that as you present more and more sort of ship body and wing area, you'll get more and more drag, and also lift, and there's a little bit of lift. So if you basically the more you're pitched up into a turn and the more surface area you're showing, you're going to get more drag pushing against you to slow you down, and also more lift pushing you up. So you're correct in that if you want to accelerate the fastest, you want the smallest cross section. So you want, like you're saying, TVI follow, you want nose exactly on TVI. If you want more lift force pushing you up, you want to sort of pitch up above your turn to get more lift, but then that will also slow you down and make acceleration harder at higher speeds. And like you're saying, at lower speeds, the drag plays a much less of a significant part. So, for example, combining thrust from multiple axes can give you highest performance. And then also, of course, yawing. Usually, you don't want the aerodynamic effects from yawing because that's just kind of free. It's just drag slowing you down, unless you want that drag. So, yaw is usually not something you want in most ships. But yeah, any other questions about flight or atmospherics? All right, I will jump forward to coupled versus decoupled flight.
Yeah.
All right, the fun one. And then after this, we'll jump into Arena Commander and do a couple exercises. So coupled versus decoupled, I like to use the analogy cruise control in your car versus gas and brake. So if I go into coupled mode, when I give input in my stick, what I'm actually doing is I'm giving a goal velocity, goal speed and direction to the flight system. So if I push my stick just forward, and if I push it to, say, I don't know, 5%, I'm telling the flight system I want to go, 5% of my top speed. And again, because my speed limiter's off, that top speed is 1,300 meters a second. And so if I go, and I wish I had my input showing on screen, I'm only giving maybe 20% thrust input, 30%. So I'm really not using very much of my stick. And if I go, so I'm going to go all the way forward until I hit max speed. And then I'm just going to release my stick and drop it backward until I start slowing down. And that's at about, let's see, less than 50% of my stick travel. Right about, let's see. Here's where I start slowing down. So when you're in coupled mode, it heavily interacts with your speed limiter, where you're basically just saying your stick input is how fast you want to go. And then the flight system controls all of the acceleration related to that. So if I want to go forward and strafe up, what I'm doing is I'm telling the flight system, put me along this vector that's, roughly 45-degree angle upward. And due to the aerodynamics, I'm never actually going to get on that vector. I'm never actually going to get on that vector, but the flight system is going to thrust to try to do that for me. And it's not even necessarily going to use max thrust to do it. So you're kind of at the mercy of whatever the flight system wants to do when you give it inputs in coupled mode. And so, for example, if I turn my speed limiter on, I set my velocity to SEM. Now if I give full thrust input, that's saying I want to go at my speed limit, right? And 50% of thrust input, I want to go at, half my speed limit. So that's the other thing, is in coupled mode, if you're using the speed limiter, what your thrust input is basically completely depends on what the travel of your stick is controlling a percentage of whatever your speed limiter is. So if you're changing your speed limiter, you're also changing what speed you're giving. And then lastly, of course, in atmosphere, because your top speed is so much slower than your atmospheric top speed, you're kind of wasting a lot of speed unless you're playing with your speed limiter. So coupled mode can be imprecise for those reasons. The other thing is that, at least I feel, target speed is not necessarily something we think about when we're racing. You kind of want thrust. So an example would be like if you're trying to race a Formula 1 track, and again, in coupled mode, we'll only ever fire thrust at full power. If you imagine you're trying to go around a Formula 1 track with a cruise control dial, and you knew exactly what speed you wanted at every single point on the track at every second, you were dialing your speed to what you wanted. You could probably do it, but it would probably break most people's brains, and you wouldn't be able to feather your gas or your brake for optimal performance. It is possible, it's definitely possible to get the same kind of turning speeds in coupled. It's definitely possible to get the same turning speeds in coupled as decoupled, but you need extremely fine inputs. So you want basically you want just enough strafe input in coupled to get the flight system to give you that torque that you want without it basically killing your main thrust to put you on another axis. So with just the teeniest bit of strafe up input, I'm not actually telling it to strafe up, I'm just telling it put me on a vector that's 5% above my nose, and I can still get that 500 meter a second turn rate, but it essentially requires more precision, and it's also even harder with mouse and keyboard to get this kind of precision in coupled. So yeah, coupled is probably going to, decoupled is probably going to be easier for most people to have higher speeds when turning.
I just want to add, like when I first joined the verse and I was flying coupled, I was very confused, like why my ship was like jumping forwards and backwards when I was trying to maintain a speed, until I learned that, oh, it's trying, you know, if I put my stick forward to a certain amount, it's trying to keep me at that target speed. And then when I turned to decoupled, I was like, oh, finally everything's relaxing and I can do it manually. But of course, this is most importantly for sticks, I guess.
It's worse in atmosphere too. I think a lot of the time it's easy for us to forget. Like in 0G, if you're getting enough speed and you have enough weight, you can kind of feel like decoupled mode anyway. You always want to be decelerating when you're not giving thrust, so like coupled mode isn't so bad. But in atmosphere, especially when you're trying to maintain speed while like racing stuff, people really underestimate how much those little bits of counter thrust, even at the right times, can sort of burn unnecessary energy and really change your lines and mess with your speed. I was amazed when I saw how much slower it was the first time. I was already decoupled and I was still amazed.
I found this.
I also have to add for mouse and keyboard players that basically when you're pressing coupled, when you're pressing W, it's firing your main thrust at full power, and when you press and when you release W, it's gonna fire your front thrusters to slow you down at max power. So it's even more important to actually be on decoupled because you're not gonna go anywhere on coupled. I mean, you're not going to go anywhere fast.
Yep, that's a good point. So in coupled, essentially, if you release all inputs in coupled, it's basically the same as if you were holding space brake without boost. It's so yeah, no keyboard input or no input in coupled. It's telling the system I would like to go 0 meters a second. So some people do use that in 0G, like they toggle coupled on, or they use it as a hold, as like a. It's always going to brake against whatever your vector direction is and lock it. So and like with space brake, not great for racing, but it is a good stability aid. So actually that jumps into the next topic, decoupled landing. Are you all, I guess I should ask, are you all familiar with like decoupled landing? Or is anyone that's not super familiar?
I have tried it.
Vector lock.
So I've used it, but yeah. I wouldn't say I understand it completely, other than I keep going and then I walk off and oh look, I'm landed.
That's a good place to start. All right, well, so here, if we jump into this if you jump into free flight, winner's circle, and just sort of pick any ship, I'll go into a demonstration of decoupled landing. So one thing you can do with so when you are decoupled and when you have your gear down, the flight system automatically fights against gravity. So you can probably see our trusty little P-72. If I come to a stop, some of these thrusters are going to be thrusting against gravity very gently. Yeah, there's not a lot of gravity, but it's a very gentle thrust.
Where are they? I actually don't know on that thing. Could it be the wings as well? Are they on the wings?
I think it's those two.
It's those little, yeah.
Oh, there they
These
are.
little orange goobers.
It's one of the tails.
They're really not much. It is a lot of wing lift.
All right. So what you can do for just sort of smooth, almost call it racer style landings, is once you have your gear down, you can use your strafe controls to effectively just move your TVI around in space. And some people nicknamed this vector lock mode because essentially where you put your vector, especially at slow speeds where you don't have a lot of aerodynamic effects, your vector is basically locked. So even without, say, head tracking, I can put my vector on these landing pads and sort of point my nose kind of wherever I want, but essentially lining it up so that my landing gear is going to come in flat. Just sort of have to trust the obstacles are where you want. And then if I just feather space brake, and again, remember we turn off space brake as boost, come into this very gentle landing, and then kill your engines, and then you are down.
Or
of course, it's sliding for some reason.
Yeah,
alternative to space brake is reverse thrust.
Yep,
Carefully.
and that's something. Yep, you can. And remember, when you thrust when your vector is locked, it will also move your vector. So that's kind of one thing you can play with at slow speeds. Is say like if my vector is here, if I reverse thrust, I'm pulling that vector backward. But yeah, it's a great thing to practice, is essentially flying in a direction and then trying to thrust against your vector or slow down without moving your vector too much from the point where you want. And a good landing speed is generally about like 5-10 meters a second. It depends on the ship. But that way you can sort of have a confident landing without really worrying about where you're pointed.
That is a great thing to practice because I've found it'll give you a really good feel, a good sense for vectoring and how to counteract your TVI in just the way you want. Right? You know, say if you're going into a really tight turn at high speed and you want to slow down a little bit, don't hit the space brake. Learn how to apply counter thrust in just the right direction.
That's
and you
right,
won't
because-
learn if you're coupled.
Yeah.
If you have the computer
No,
doing
you
it
won't.
for you, you will learn zero muscles. All the time you spend racing coupled. I feel quite strongly about this, so maybe I'm being too zealous, but all the time you spend racing coupled, you are just lacking this subtle
Right.
subconscious muscle memory buildup of the counter thrust that George is talking about. And you will
I would
eventually
argue-
one day want to turn it off, and then I think every single person here will talk to, when that day came, they're like, oh, I wish I did this sooner because I would already have so much muscle memory instead.
You know, I was racing
Yeah.
in Elite Dangerous using keyboard and mouse, and I always flew flight assist on, which is the equivalent of flying coupled. And obviously with keyboard mouse, it's very comforting to know that the computer system will automatically sort of arrest you and make sure that you don't, that the gravity doesn't pull on you. And just being able to fire off all these thrusters in different directions. But then when I started playing Star Citizen and I started playing with sticks, I mean, there's just nothing more smooth and giving you that fine control than decoupled, excuse me.
Agreed. And I would add that not only does flying coupled make you, as Saber said, I want to avoid the word lazy, but it'll avoid teaching you really good things that are useful to know, but also even space brake. And that comes back to the countering your TVI in exactly the opposite direction. Being a really good thing to practice, because you hit space brake, basically you're engaging temporary coupled mode, and you have far more control if you put the time into learning how to counter that manually.
Especially since space brake really locks the vector, right? As long as you hold it, you can't steer.
Yeah,
you can't do anything.
if you hold
exactly.
if you hold space brake, you can pitch and yaw, but you can't, and roll, but you can't steer anymore. So one thing is just right here, I'm using
Can't change your vector.
keyboard and mouse to do
You can't
to sort of
control
do
your
one of
vector.
these landings.
It can
And
change.
especially in a faster ship, it can be a little touchy to even use keyboard and mouse to do a vector lock landing, but it is definitely doable. Just have to tap it very gently and kind of watch the direction your vector is moving. Yeah, totally doable. But definitely, something to yes, if you want to hop into free flight, try this a little bit, but then we'll jump on to the next one. I don't know why it's so slidey, but
Talked about the default
I noticed
setting.
that. That's very interesting. I think this somehow isn't locking you into the terrain.
Yeah, Arena
Did they
Commander
take
doesn't
away
have,
the
physical? The objects are not like the physical objects in as in PU.
Yep.
I thought they were doubled, these pads.
it's-
Steve.
yeah,
Didn't
and
you blow
it's-
my mind with that last class?
it's strange. But you actually have 2G on these pads because I think they copy pasted them from 0G. So you're
So the 2G and slippery right now? That's
Yep.
weird.
But in
Landing
any
gear
case,
bug.
That's a very cool pad, though. I did not know that existed.
yep, they're
When
on
we
all
raced,
the 0G pre-flight maps.
icebreaker maze, the landing was broken like that, and I think you heard us all bitching, but like, it was no joke. Every single person on the grid was just getting blown around by the wind on an icy surface like that, and just sitting there with no lats, like waiting for the race to start. Like, oh god, I'm gonna end up with the guy next to me before the boops even come.
I found a spot where you don't slide. By the way, go ahead, Maze, and anybody who wants to check my stream. Apparently, you don't slide here.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to DJ Bunton, who's in chat as well. He works on Arena Commander, and he says, yeah, for some weird reason, these pads are very slidey.
Oh, nice. Oh. What up, DJ?
Yeah, hey, DJ.
Hey, DJ.
Yep. And 2G for some reason. But yeah, I remember years ago, all bunkers had that problem where all bunkers had a 2G gravity field because I guess they had 1G and the planets had 1G. So your starfarers would fall out of the sky at bunkers.
So this, there's a couple of grass triangles here that I'm not sliding at.
Grassy knolls.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. So jumping forward to TVI and left stick flying, something folks talk about, we call it kind of left stick flying, which is what we were talking about earlier, the fact that you get the kind of torque and aerodynamic effects in ships. And actually here, I'm going to jump out to a trusty Aurora just because it's easier to see those effects.
In Aurora we trust.
In Aurora we trust.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like since the Arena Commander changes, Steve, the Krugers like almost make what you're doing harder. Because there's a lot of like asterisks to the Kruger when you're talking about the flight model and aerodynamics and stuff. It kind of almost be better if everybody. Is there a cheap ship that has less weird aero stuff?
I think the Razors, of course, are rentable and they have that. But yeah,
But not
the
cheap
Aurora.
rentable.
But yeah, so here do the Aurora real quick. Just going to come to a stop, and then you can see with these big old wings on the back, this is even more than the Razor. I'm getting that nose down, and that's just from the torque on the rear wings there. So if we do the same thing, I'm going to add a strafe up, which is stronger than the 1G. You can see I get that lovely pitch up effect. And again, the only thing that I'm doing right now is pitching.
Very quick shout out to
and
Data Machine, who is starting his formation flying class as well, if anybody's interested.
Yep. Formation flying is a good time. So yeah, definitely jump in there and hang out. That's the other reason we're in voice 2, because formation flight, everybody's could be over in voice 1. Okay. So also with the Aurora, if I'm just thrusting forward and I try to yaw, I'm going to get these sort of bucking aerodynamic effects. So sometimes folks, if you're trying to race a track and you're trying to just do yaw, you say, why is my ship not doing what I want? Why is it bucking? Of course. But if we're kind of at this 45-degree angle and try to like yaw and pitch, we're kind of going to get the same sort of fighting effect in a lot of ships. But if we roll completely over, so we're 90 degrees relative to the turn, and pitch up. Again, I'm just going forward and I'm just pitching. We're not getting that fighting feeling, and we're definitely returning. But however, you can notice if you see the TVI is lagging pretty far behind the crosshair, and you can remember that's giving us a lot of drag, and that's also going to be hurting our speed a lot. So, like I think you all were mentioning before, by adding strafe up into that turn, we're not only getting the benefit of strafe up, but we're also getting the torque that strafe up applies. And then that is also helping bring our nose around as well. And because our nose is directly on TVI, we're getting the least amount of drag in that highest speed. So we're using the aerodynamic effects to sort of the greatest advantage here. And that is giving us this sort of highest turn speed of about 208 meters a second. And the Aurora at this altitude, let's see, what is its max speed? It is about 208. So we're basically in a turn, we're getting about the same speed as we would be getting if we were flying in a straight line. Versus with no strafe up, if we're just doing pitch, we have now dropped to, about 150, 130. But kind of what that means is there's quite a bit of flying that you can do actually without giving any pitch or yaw, and just with left stick. So yeah, flying at kind of high speed here, just applying left strafe, I'm getting this lovely yaw effect. If I add just a little bit of yaw to stay on TVI, I get my speed back up, but I'm getting yaw again. And then it's the same with strafe up and down. So just strafing up, I get a pitch up, and then strafing down, I get a pitch down. It's kind of what folks call left stick flying. But what that essentially means is that, if you can imagine, the distance between your crosshair and the TVI is what you might call inflate your angle of attack. So that essentially is your, like you're saying before, Saber, it's the ratio. If you are pitching up completely into a turn, the distance between your nose and your TVI is essentially how much lift do you want upwards versus how much forward speed do you want. So if you watch the G meter on the right, you can see that giving full pitch up and full strafe forward into a turn, I'm getting about 4 Gs. As I pitch up past that, my Gs are going to start increasing. So you can see 4.8, 4.9, 5.0, and my speed's going to drop. See, I'm getting down to that like 130 range. But my Gs are going to continue to increase. So my vertical, and you can see from the red line, it's basically just forward, or basically just vertical. So yeah, 5.5, 5.6. You can evaluate the turning performance of a lot of ships just by, and kind of figuring out what sort of turns you want to do by essentially just choosing that distance between nose and TVI. So like if you're coming into a turn, for example, you can slow down just by nosing above your TVI. That'll slow you down and give you lift into the turn.
That's those extra Gs that you're describing, right, Steve? Like you're describing the moment in the turn where you exceed the TVI follow being where you're pulling more Gs than your verts alone could provide because you're now using aero braking. So basically that's something that people could explicitly look to eliminate, right? Like anytime where you do less of that and still pull off the lap is going to be faster, right? As long as you keep the distance between points short.
Yep. Correct. So for example, if you were on a track where, so whatever this turn rate is, where say I'm in my Aurora and I'm at that max 208 speed and I've got my nose on TVI, if I can minimize the amount of time that I spend doing this, with nose away from TVI, I'm going to get not only less braking, but remember it's the slower you are, the longer it takes to get up to max speed, right? It takes, if I'm down to 100 meters a second, I speed up pretty quickly to like 150, 160, and then I'm crawling back up to 208. So anytime you get dropped down below your max speed, it takes even longer to get back up. And that's where boost can help, because boost will shorten that time. But yeah, if you could do an entire track nose on TVI, you would have the least amount of slowdown from drag. And you would, if you also had a short path around the track, that would give you the fastest time. Because remember, your time around the track is a combination of the average speed you have around the track, but also the distance. So you kind of want to essentially minimize your distance and maximize your speed over that distance to get the fastest time. So if you are overspeeding and you are taking a really wide path around a turn and going way too far than you need to go, you will, even if you're at a higher speed, your time might be slower because you're going over a further distance. All right, so I guess if folks want to hop into Arena Commander, and you can share your screen as well, and I see you're doing that, Jork. You basically want to, kind of the exercise here for decoupled turns is, find your highest straight line speed, play with your angle of attack, and then for your turns you want to first roll, then strafe up, and then pitch up so that your nose is on TVI, and then you can pitch past your TVI to sort of play with that angle of attack to figure out your turn rate and both your turn rate and your speed. So yeah, we'll give that a couple minutes, about 3 minutes or so. But yeah, here I'll.
If anybody else other than Jork would like to share his Discord view, that would be amazing. Can guide you and support you.
I've just discovered all of these landing pads around here. You slide on them, but all of the other surfaces, like lawns, gardens, buildings, everything that I've landed on, I haven't slid. It's only the landing pads. That seems backwards.
It'd be.
Something wacky about the landing pads.
Yeah.
Who was like the primary designer of Miners, Maze?
That's all CIG. They did it in one
Yeah,
of the ISEs. They showed it. Their names escape me, but yeah, it's just CIG.
Okay.
I'm looking at Kill Red. Kill Red's doing an amazing job keeping that nose on TVI and then finding the optimal turn radius there.
Yep. So yeah, then
Nice.
I guess what did we say the top speed was in the P72? It was like just over 400, like 408. So yeah, what you kind of want to play with is figure out where to put your TVI to get you those max Gs in a turn. Because you see you're only getting like what, 4 Gs at 440 or so. That's a certain turn radius. That would be what I call the high speed turn. So that gives you the highest speed in a turn, but kind of the lowest turn rate. But once you kind of figure out where that is, where to get the sort of highest amount of Gs, and again, even just without boost, slicking the Aurora, I'm dropped down to about 130, but I can max out my Gs at about, and it's again where they stabilize from drag, about 6 Gs. So that would be the turn rate that I'd want to have the fastest turn rate, but lose the least amount of speed.
That's one thing I feel like I haven't mastered yet. Finding the balance between doing what Red's doing right now, where you find that like keeping the nose on TVI, and that point-to-point thing where it's like running in a straight line, turning really fast, running in a straight line, turning really fast. Like I find it so hard to determine whether there's like a middle ground where it's like, in these turns you should turn really sharp, in these turns you should keep it as wide as possible. That's what I find hard.
You know how you solve that, Maze? You race in a group and you learn from other people's strategies on the track, and then you'll just get to compare where you're faster and slower. The more time I spend with a group on the same track, the less I start to wonder about those things. The more it's like, this is how you take this turn. It is known.
That's what I was about to say with Icebreaker, especially coming around the Matterhorn.
It's very true.
Slow and gradual or point to point. And the group,
nice.
Flying in the group and watching everyone, ended up sorting it out.
Yeah, and it was neither. It was fast and all the way around, not point to point.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kill and Ziggy Zoo, if you want to figure out where you can maximize your Gs, or try to figure out where your Gs, vertical Gs, are maximized with that pitch above TVI. So it'll probably be, I usually think about it, the TVI will probably be somewhere down in your radar. So if you just keep pitching so that your nose is away from TVI, and see how high you can get your Gs. That's going to be your kind of highest turn rate. And you kind of want to ride that line. Because another thing about these ships, the way the G model works is you can sustain high Gs for a short period of time, but the longer you sustain those high Gs, the faster you'll black out. It's usually about 3 to 5 seconds of high G. If you think about it, you've got about 3 to 5 seconds of consciousness in your brain before you lose it. So it's almost better to pull higher Gs for a shorter period of time, pull 20 Gs for 2 seconds than to pull 10 Gs for 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's something I noticed the pros doing, where it's like super fast G but short duration. And I guess in Star Citizen especially, that's currently rewarded, right?
Always has been. And no matter how they've tuned the blackouts, it's always rewarded short duration, high threshold maneuvers. Whereas in real life, that would like liquefy your brain, and it wouldn't matter how short the duration was. That's always been a thing. I don't expect that to change. I'd be surprised if it did.
That's a really good way to visualize it and watch it, I think, where your TVI is on your dashboard. I hadn't thought of that. So you take a
Become the
turn
formation
and you
flight. They
and
do that
you-
a lot in
yeah.
formation flight.
change the hours. I would. You plant it right in the middle of your radar projector, or in the middle of a lower MFD or something, and then watch that. So you have a point of reference. Is my only point I'm getting at.
Yeah, and again, your brain will sort of start to pick that. Like eventually, you'll be able to feel what your turn rate is and kind of where your TVI is. But kind of when you're figuring out, it's sort of like, okay,
Yeah.
where do you get that? Because I feel like that what I call the high rate turn, where you have the highest sustained G's with the highest possible speed. If you are turning essentially at a higher rate than that, you're just yanking back on the pitch.
Yeah.
Then you're going to start getting into what I call like the min radius turn. So
Yeah.
remember, there were 3 types of turns. There's a high speed turn where your nose on TVI, so your fastest up strafe, full forward, but your lowest turn rate. You've got your high rate turn, which is you are essentially parking your TVI below your nose to get as much aerodynamic lift. And again, that applies to ships that have higher aerodynamic lift. And then the last one is going to be this sort of what we call the min radius turn. So if we see these lovely buildings here in Arena Commander, they've got these antennas on top. Say I had a turn in a course which was just trying to do a hook around one of these antennas. What I want to essentially do in this turn is kill my speed completely and go essentially make a 180-degree turn. So carrying speed through the turn is not as important, because in that case I'm kind of going to be overspeeding. So
Right.
and it depends on what the entry to the turn is, what the exit is, and all of that. But if it was just this 180-degree pull, I'm going to want to do whatever I can to sort of slow down and kill my speed. So kind of what you're going to be doing there, when you're going to be slowing down to a slow speed, and you're going to, some people actually tricord, which is using, full up, full side, and full mains. But you can exploit kind of that aero braking effect to do that. You want the radius of the turn to be as short as possible. So here, if I'm flying up to this at high speed, I'm probably actually going to let off the stick a little bit, let the aero braking kick in, and then accelerate through out of it, and then get my nose back on TVI as soon as possible. So if you can, once you've kind of mastered the min radius turn, the high rate turn, the high speed turn, you can start thinking about ways to put them together. But yeah, before we do that, let's talk about sort of the different parts of a turn. So did I have a diagram for this? I guess I didn't.
I just wanted to add, really, that it was a real eye-opener for me, what Steve just explained, because I never did like the arrow thing. I never understood it. I never realized on these tight turns that, like, hey, you don't have to do everything with just your thrusters, right? The aerodynamics can help you. And so I was always doing the retro thrust to manually slow down and then try to pitch into it, having lost my speed. But then again, people like Shaq knew, right? They're just pitching up really aggressively and leaning on the arrow to do that slowing down. That was a big eye-opener for me.
Yeah, it's a break.
But yeah, essentially, and it depends on the ship too, but like if you think about something like the Aurora, if you pitch up into a turn, you are basically the speed brake. So if you're at the point where your nose is 90 degrees above the TVI, you're getting all of this braking force as you sort of drift and as you slide into that turn. Another thing also to keep in mind with some ships like the Razor is that once your speed drops below a certain amount, you lose what people call the grip from the wings. So you will potentially start drifting into a turn. So that's something that's definitely killed me on Snake Pit before, is when your speed drops too low, you lose that grip, and then you essentially are relying on your thrusters to arrest that turn.
That's important when you're learning, I think, or at least I found it at Lorville, where I tried to learn the track slow, which is great for learning the geometry. But as soon as I went faster, the behavior of the ship changed so much.
And that's why I feel like I recommend often taking a slower ship and trying to race it at its fastest speed instead of trying to race a fast ship slow. Because like a Razor, you're really only going to feel, or P72, you're really only going to feel these like aerodynamic effects and everything at those higher speeds. So again, it's a completely different ship. But that's why I like the Aurora. It's kind of like a Razor at 50% speed. It has very similar aerodynamics. Okay, so talking about turns really fast, and looks like I've lost my diagram. But there's sort of 3 phases to a turn, and a lot of the turns on our tracks are going to be. You have a lot of room to do turns on some of these tracks, depending. Maybe it's like Snake Pit, maybe it's something else. But essentially, you've got the entry phase of your turn, where generally you're not always braking, but you are trying to essentially line yourself up. Then the apex is going to be the point in the turn that is sort of closest to the inside of the turn. So like if we were, I need to figure out a way to draw on these diagrams. But if you see this antenna, if you imagine the point at which I'm closest to that antenna is going to be the apex of the turn. And so we have our entry and our exit. So there's this a couple ways to do it, but if you think about it, when you hit the apex of the turn is when you're closest. That's the point at which you are going to be essentially trying to line up and point to the next turn. So say I am doing a let's see, I don't have here. So give me 1 second. But yeah, so you're some of the techniques that apply to car racing also apply to ships, of course, but you are doing it in more degrees rather than just sort of the 2 degrees in car racing. But sorry, I've got a diagram from the icebreaker real fast.
Any questions in the meantime? Something anybody is struggling with?
I do have a specific question about left stick flying and when to pitch or yaw. I mean, majority of the race ships right now, they benefit a little bit more from pitching, I believe.
A lot. But
Most.
What is it that you struggle with? What's the question?
On icebreaker, I am trying to pull a sub-minute, and I keep pulling a minute or 1 minute, 1 second.
Rexy, how did you break a minute on icebreaker?
Well, sorry, I'm really curious to hear what he struggles with.
And I think I found an optimal line, but for some reason, matching your TVI and your crosshair, I feel like I can improve there. And my question, sorry, it's a little bit long, but my question is...
No, you're fine, dude. Take your time, please.
Matching more your left stick, or like how you control your ship, or trying to match it with the pitching yaw to match the TVI. Is there like a combination? Is it more using left stick? Or...
It's definitely a combination of both.
It's
going to be
definitely
different for every
both.
single ship, especially with how they react to lateral forces, and yawing is actually really important when you're rolling to try and keep that on. That can be a bit of it. But if you're almost sub 1 minute, it's probably boost management. That'll get you there.
Okay.
In general,
you
it
also should be
definitely
careful.
will be pitch, though. Like, it's always pitch first, really, and then yaw for all your fine control that's needed.
Yeah.
I also found that there are some ships where the way you handle your left sticks affects the stability of your ship, and it affects how easy it is to match your TVI. So you might want to look into that.
What ship are you using, Redbeard?
The P52 for the sub minute, and I've been practicing the P72, where I try to get a 1 minute 2 seconds. That's where I'm aiming at right now.
Those are good times, man. I hope you break through those barriers.
Yeah, it's just I'm struggling with like, I always want to engage my main thrusters, but do I want to control my TVI with my side thruster / up thruster more, or do I want to also use my pitch like gently to control that or to stay on that perfect line?
I think a lot of
There's
it
really gonna be
is
two
pulling
types
hard
of
on the
turns.
pitch, right? Sorry, we're stepping on
Yeah.
each other. I'll keep it short. Like typically, what you do is you're doing in the turn. You're gonna be fully engaging your vertical up thrust because why not? And then you're still gonna feel like your turn radius isn't quick enough, so you'll pull really hard on the pitch, and so you're sort of overturning. And then at the moment where you feel like, okay, my TVI, my vector is now on the right point, you'll pitch or you'll release the pitch and get your nose back onto the TVI because your TVI is always going to be behind, right? So sometimes you'll feel like, okay, I want to make a really tight turn, so you'll pull really hard and then come off again. So it's a combo. It's of course verts and pitch.
Definitely both.
It's changing, Maze. There have been places where I've watched my guys set world records lately by doing things that I would normally consider to be counterintuitive. Like, oh, this turn in this one ship is just faster without verts, even though it should just be about moving your TVI as quickly as possible. And just weird idiosyncrasies keep coming up.
Yep.
Time trialing, it stays pretty interesting, honestly. I've been impressed. Hang out with other racers and steal their tricks. I think that's a solid piece of advice that won't change. And
it's always
watch
easier
their
to get-
time trials.
Yeah, it's always easier to get advice on like specific turns or specific spots in turns. Like, you know, if you're following someone, you go, okay, why am I 2 seconds slower on this one segment? Right? Or you can essentially see where you're losing time versus someone else based on how much they gap you. So, you know, if you're going 300 meters a second and after a turn they are a kilometer ahead, then you know you've lost 3 seconds on them right after that turn. Yeah, here, let's talk about turn types a little bit now that I've got a diagram.
Check out
So here we've
Steve's
got-
stream.
Yeah, sorry, if you look over at my stream. So we've got our trusty little razor on Icebreaker here. So if you can imagine, this first turn, we're going to call it the apex of this turn is basically, you know, that little inside flag, right? So our entry of the turn, you can imagine we're going to be accelerating coming out of the gate. At some point, we're going to want to turn in towards the apex. See if I can try to do it in a neutral way. And
Come
then,
on, Steve, fly better.
That's right. So if you can imagine, this is sort of our sort of shortest path, right? Like we're going towards the apex, we turn, and then we're going up the hill, and and all is good.
That's the P52 line.
Don't drink and fly. Don't drink. Don't drink and fly.
So you could call that sort of a neutral apex, right? Where at the point that we're hitting this apex, you could imagine our ship is sort of pointed, directly at these buildings. But an important thing when you're taking each turn is, of course, how you're lining yourself up for the next turn. And again, we're not talking about other people on the track. We're just talking about sort of yourself. So sometimes people will talk about like early apex or late apex. So what a late apex turn might look like is you're taking the apex late in your turn. So if I'm coming out and then I turn in sort of early, this point where I'm at the apex is late in the turn. But if you can imagine, if I sort of took the turn wide, I need to fly better with my mouse. Turn wide, and I came in here, I'm already pointed up the hill at the point that I hit this apex. And I'm sort of already, like, as soon as you're pointed, up the hill and you're ready to accelerate, you're spending less time being slow and less time turning. So what it is easy to do, especially if you're getting started on these tracks, is to do what might be an early apex turn, which would be, I'm trying to take it as tight as possible. I see the apex and I'm like, cool, I'm at the point of the turn. And then now I'm sort of up here and I'm turning. And I've heard some people say that, they're taking this first turn and they're like, oh God, why am I going to hit the building, right? If this were a different type of turn where maybe we were taking the apex and then turning left, that might be fine. But in this type of turn where we're kind of trying to go up the hill as fast as possible, this case we're trying to do this late apex turn where you're sort of turning in a little later and then you're up the hill as fast as possible. That can kind of keep you the tightest. And one way to do that is to, for example, when you're taking these turns, figure out your points of reference. So where your eyes are looking is a big thing in these turns. So like as I'm coming up the hill, I'm figuring out where I want to line myself up, figure out which things are going to cue me into starting my turn, and then, so I'm sort of lined up for this next turn and going up the hill. But yeah, it's kind of really all about when you sort of start that pitch up and that break. And again, Icebreaker is a track that for a lot of ships you can just be full throttle most of the time because a lot of the turns are more gentle. So really your braking and your lift that you're getting in the turn, which is ship dependent, it's really all about where do you start that pitch up, how hard do you pitch when you get close to the apex, and then when you line up for your next turn. And again, kind of like Maze was saying, on some of these turns, and it's going to be my lovely little razor at where's my rotate? At the point that I'm coming up the hill, it's possible that even though my path is up the hill, my nose might be pushed further than the TVI, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to push the it's basically easier to move your nose than it is to move your TVI. So in some cases, it could be more useful to try to use the benefit of kind of your main thrust and your up thrust to push your TVI faster, and then to pitch back to the ship.
It's again a thing that I never did, and you know, I watch people like Lagos and Speedweed on the R-Corp track, for example. I never like oversteered with my crosshair, and so like my turn radius would be way bigger than everybody else because I was waiting for my vertical thrust to do it. And so instead of just waiting for the vertical thrust and then like oversteering the nose a little bit, you notice like, oh hey, now because I'm oversteering the nose, the aerodynamics were going to help me get my TVI there quicker.
And then you snap.
Yep. And again, and it's a thing, speed is important too. Like if you are doing a really high speed turn, that distance between nose and your TVI, of course, that's slowing you down a lot. But if you are already getting to kind of a lower speed on the turn, you're not getting extra drag from having your nose oversteered past your TVI. But here, so I can sort of demonstrate from the same turn. So I'm coming in full speed, so we're going to do... So that would have been, for example, a late apex turn. But let me try to do... Watching my stream, let me try to do an early apex turn. So if I'm coming through the start-finish, I'm sort of pointing at the turn, trying to cut it as close as possible, and then now I'm kind of flying way off. And so that extra distance that I'm getting is probably what's going to be costing me a little bit of that time in turn. Even though, you know, I still maybe was feeling fast and all of that. A lot of some of these lines is actually trying to both minimize the distance that you're taking and then of course, the amount of time your nose is away from your TVI. So if I'm coming through here, I'm actually going to turn harder and turn later. And so you can see as I cut that apex, I was actually already pointed most of the way up the hill. And then I'm kind of on my way to sort of boost and throw myself up. So actually, if folks following along, if you want to, it's good, as an exercise, if you can hop into Icebreaker yourself and go into Free Flight, and we're actually going to do a mini track, and we're going to do turn optimization just on a couple turns.
What ship do you recommend?
I'd recommend the Razor, but really anything you have that you're comfortable with. It's a racing ship. So you're going back to my screen. I'll just show the route. We're gonna take the Razor.
You could use a 52 if you don't.
But yeah, 52 would be fine. P72 would be fine. Really, kind of any racing ship. Probably anything except the Fury, unless you love the Fury and you're comfortable in the Fury. Just because the Fury has really wacky aerodynamics.
You're not really going to learn what Steve's trying to teach if you take the ship with no aerodynamic profile.
Basically, I did talk to John Crew at SitCon, and they said their intention for the Fury was for it to have as little aerodynamic resistance as possible. So.
I can see that being a coherent vision and not an oversight.
Exactly. I think
Now
they
let's talk
wanted-
about
you
the
could-
Talon and the Bandit Defender not having an arrow profile. That seems a little weird.
So one thing that you'll want to bind if you don't have it already is if you go into key bindings and scroll all the way down, and then about a third of the way down, you've got something called stopwatch. You can actually bind those to the same key. So if you tap it once is a start pause, and if you hold it, it's a long press. So that allows you to, for example, do sort of timing outside of the arena commander timing, or timing stuff in the PU.
You did the game settings slide already, right, Steve? I think I might have missed that today.
I did do the game settings
Okay,
slide.
cool.
I think.
Everyone was here.
Yeah, so for stopwatch, so kind of what we're going to do is we're going to take the first checkpoint in Icebreaker. Let's see, am I still sharing? Yeah, we're going to take the first checkpoint in Icebreaker, go up the hill, turn around what's essentially the final turn, and then go back to start finish. So here, let me... And again, please remind me if I think I'm flying and I'm actually just showing Photoshop or slides or something like that.
No, we're seeing
You're,
it.
Okay.
you're down.
Okay, so coming through,
Your gear.
take this first turn. Thank you. We're gonna head up the hill, take this turn, and then we're just gonna go straight to this final checkpoint, cut that through, and then go back to the start. And I think I just cheated and I missed that last checkpoint. So here, let me do it again. So here, through the hill, through this last checkpoint, through this final checkpoint here, and then back. And so basically, we can only do single lap timing with the stopwatch. And I'm doing this really sloppy, but say with the Razor, let me see what times we should be getting. So probably easily in the 20-second range. But kind of what you want to do is, again, you can start either from a start or hot lap. Just hit the timer when you go through the start, hit all of those turns. And then once you kind of have a baseline for how long that's taking, then you can start practicing ways to take those individual segments different. And I guarantee you can shave off like a second or two just by taking some of these turns. One thing when you are practicing these longer tracks is it can be helpful to just focus on timing a subset of the turns and optimizing them with the knowledge that you do have to stitch them together, right? So the start or the end might be a little different.
Hallelujah.
But yeah, let's see what times everybody's getting just by running around these.
One of the corners has a window on it, and I didn't think it was there, and I flew into it.
Yeah, they just
Amazing.
installed those windows the other day to change.
They need new ones.
Yep, they're on it.
You wouldn't believe the insurance complaints the people that live around Skyscraper get.
You know what I found is a really good way to get fast laps on tracks, Steve? I just climb into the back of like Lagos's ship on the grid, and then, it's way easier. I usually come out in front. It's great.
I think that was a racing mission exploit they figured out early, was that you can't take the mission and just ride in somebody else's ship.
Yeah.
They did fix the bug where you have to be piloting it. So one thing I like about this little mini track is you can stay rolled on your side for the entire thing, and you actually don't.
Yep.
You don't have to re-roll, because a big part of stitching turns together is actually figuring out when and how to roll, and rolling in such a way that the aerodynamic effects don't force your nose off your TVI. And especially if you're fully decoupled, that can take some practice, is getting that really precise 90 or 180 degree snap rolls. But yeah, with this, you should just be able to stay more or less 90 degrees for the whole time. So one thing you can find on turn exit as well is trying to get your TVI to the spot that you needed on that turn exit, and then get your nose back onto it. It can be really easy in the end of a turn to, for example, roll straight again while your nose is already off your TVI by like 5-10 degrees.
Steve, I have a really important question if you can hear me.
Shoot.
Yeah, I was just trying to breaker.
We lost you.
Nope.
Who designed the icebreaker, Steve? I'm trying to remember who designed this track. Who was it that came up with the original one that CIG put into the game? I can't remember.
Can't remember.
Do you remember Maze? Maze is here. He might be able to help me.
This guy called SteveCC.
That's right.
He's a legend.
I heard he's pretty cool.
Thanks, everybody. The original icebreaker, I basically, I think it was Sater was saying Uturp was really awesome for hooning, and I was flying around out here and saw that the climb, just sort of that really awesome climb up through the mountains, and was like, I need to design a track around this. But then it was the folks at CIG that essentially, saw that, put this whole research base here, put a QT point. But yeah, I think even on SCR, a lot of people liked the track, but because it was so hard to get to, there's no respawn, there's no QT marker, visibility was hard. We still only would get like 8, maybe 10 runs on here. So once they got the in-game mission and the AC, folks can actually kind of enjoy the awesome track. And in AC, you don't have to worry about the sun blinding you or nighttime or all of the snowstorms or all of the things that make it kind of exciting in the PU, but can be pretty punishing to put times down.
Yeah, especially in the Matterhorn when it's sunset.
I think,
man.
Splen called it the icebreaker once. He was
The icebreaker.
It's like, I can't see. Ah! He was trying to put down.
Oh, why didn't I think of that? That is so good.
I never knew that, Steve. I've made that joke a bunch of times. I never knew that the track was designed around the climb, which is, I would say, a surviving feature. That was still definitely something I spent a lot of time getting my face acquainted with when I was learning the track.
And again, CIG definitely made the track. It is one of the sort of more forgiving and beginner-friendly tracks, which I really like. The original version of the track. One of these days, maybe we'll do a director's cut. The entry to the climb, if there's this little like iceberg mountain thing at the bottom, you had to actually stay under it like a tripwire.
Who was the one asking about how much?
It's pretty brutal.
How much vert or TVI did? Was it Ziggy who was asking that, or?
No, I believe that was me. Caribbean.
Right. Sorry. I'm still getting used to your names. Right. Okay. I was watching Ziggy Zoo. Really good effort. I see you swapped ships now. One tip I can give you is doing exactly what, like right here where you are now, is doing that oversteering a little bit. And then once you've oversteered and you notice that your TVI is going up the mountain, you pitch back again with your nose to get back onto TVI.
Yes.
I was watching you earlier with the sorry, go ahead.
No, I say it can be easy to stop your turn when your nose is where you want, and then
that's exactly what Ziggy is doing.
You have to kind of fudge to get your TVI in there, and it can sort of feel like a leap of faith almost to turn past.
A little more and then back. See, so okay, you're rolling back too quickly. Like stay 90 degrees for a little bit longer if you can, so you don't have to worry, because you could notice there like your TV is almost like drifting up. And I think that's because you're not rolled all the way to the right. So your vertical upstrafe is shooting you up into the air.
Then you might not even need to worry about rolling back. Like, see if you can just sort of stay rolled through the turn until you line back up again.
Yeah, it's hard with the climb, of course, because he needs to go up the hill. Oh, you're gonna hit the ice there.
I have made friends with the floor.
Yep. No, so don't overthink it, because you were doing all the things right earlier. The only little tip that I would give you is to just continue your turn a little bit more so that your TVI ends up in the right place, because you're doing exactly that thing where your nose is in the right place and then you're waiting for the verts to kick that TVI into place, and it takes longer than necessary.
It gets pretty complicated. It depends on a lot of things and ships and stuff.
That's
what I
really
say
good
about racing
already.
with other people.
I noticed that you're panicking a little. You're trying to roll back. Don't roll until your TVI is in the right place. You've got time. You've got plenty of time to roll back.
Anytime where you're trying to roll and move your TVI at the same time is going to be a sloppy TVI management because you're rolling and changing
right.
which thrusters you
Oh
want.
yeah.
Always want to try to roll over while going straight, like me said.
Stay on your side, stay on your side, stay on your side, and now roll back. Yeah, that was already much better.
Yep. Yeah, and that the exit to a turn is really probably one of the most important parts to it, because the faster you can line that TVI back up, and the faster you can start accelerating again, you can easily gain or lose like a second or two per turn, or even fraction of a second. Oh yeah, that was
Steve, are you in
kill
game?
record.
Is there any chance you can demo this, or?
Yeah, here I'll demo that. I just realized I did a infinite effect there on my stream.
Have you talked about pulling the string today, Steve? I always like that visual for when people are asking about high speed versus high rate turns. The shortest distance versus highest speed thing always made most sense to me.
So Ziggy, if you're interested, take a look at Steve's. He's into Razor now as well on the track.
All right, and I will
show off a little bit.
I'll try to demonstrate. So yeah, one thing I think I remember Jork Bortley used to mention this a lot, that if you could imagine there's sort of a string connecting your crosshair and your TVI, and as you are you're essentially orienting your ship in such a way to kind of pull your TVI around. You can imagine, your vertical thrusters pull your TVI the most. Your main thrusters pull the TVI.
I didn't mention the string. I mentioned flying the TVI.
Flying the TVI, that was it.
Yeah, I was talking about the.
Hey everybody, we've just muted the Discord momentarily. I'm gonna just give you a quick sneak peek. We've got Data Machine currently hosting his formation flying event in the other voice channel on our server. Just going to pop in and say hello and give you a glimpse at what that looks like. I'm currently just preparing the screen. And let's go and say hi.
Order front left. Direction
I see it.
flying.
I see it. Yep.
Hey, Data Machine. We're
now.
live with XGR at the moment, and we're just saying hello, checking in on the formation flight. I was just explaining to everybody that we host formation flight sessions as well. You guys are flying the MPUV right now. How's it going?
We're cruising around Babbage right now. Unfortunately, I got the timing mixed up, so it's kind of nighttime, but we're still having a good time.
That's good. Can you give us a nice view? Look at that.
I'm
looking.
Are you
I'm
watching
on your Twitch. Yeah,
okay.
We're on your Twitch, and I'll drop a link to your Twitch as well in chat in a moment. If people want to go and check this out, they can do that live. This happens, every Sunday, pretty much?
Pretty much every Sunday, yeah.
Why the MPUV today?
Just a little change of pace. Just having a nice little cruise. Kind of relaxing.
I like it. All right, I'll leave you guys to it. We'll get back to class.
All right.
Amazing.
Faith, did I get the right time? And I'll pitch up hard, but then pause the pitch and then do it again.
Yeah. I feel like that's definitely an easy spot to sort of, at least for me, to lose time, is stop my pitch too soon.
Yep.
But yeah, once your nose is on TVI, and then that is often when you want to start using boost, is if you boost going into a turn, you're almost getting yourself more speed and possibly making the turn longer than it needs to be. But if you boost on the exit of the turn, you're accelerating and pushing past drag as fast as possible to get back up to speed.
And snapping faster.
Yep, and snapping faster. But yeah, sir, what was it you're saying, Saber, about the
You
make sure
you talked. We kind of talked about it a bunch, but like Maze has talked about it too. Like high speed versus high rate turns. There's two ways to take a turn. One is the shortest path between 2 points, like pulling on a string and imagining tightening up the racing line, and the other is conserving the most speed through the turn. And sort of doing this string analogy and drawing how you can pull the racing line and push it in corners. It kind of helps me visualize how, like, when we're talking about practicing Icebreaker together and practicing these tracks together in groups, how we try on different boost schemes and we try on different versions of turn 1 versus different versions of turn 2. And eventually, you'll find that this one is half a second faster than that one or whatever. And that's how the sort of community agreed racing line and the fastest times and the time trial line all develops.
I like the string analogy. I might take that on board.
Either's
No, I
good
like that.
analogies.
Great
I
stuff,
like that one.
Steve.
I might have to steal that. Hey,
It's
Luigi.
yours. I stole it from you.
All right, so I guess one thing, let's see, we can do is we get towards the end here. We talked about the racing line.
Yeah.
Of course, I did end up having this diagram in my slides. I think
Oh God,
the
Ziggy.
same thing happened at 6.
That's
I
a
didn't
lie.
realize that. I didn't. Yeah.
All right, so I guess
All
just
right.
to talk about a couple of these things really fast. Where's my...
Ah.
So, talking about the racing line, yeah, optimal path around a course. It's about how you enter, hit the apex, and exit. How you exit one turn and set up for the next. So yeah, two great examples. That first turn on Icebreaker is a high rate, and then the climb is really a high speed because you can TBI follow kind of all the way up the hill. The racing line I think of as a combination of where your ship is, which way it's rotated at each point, and where you're looking. Because where your eyes, I feel like people underestimate how important it is to think about where you're looking and where your visual points of reference are. And not even including head tracking, just where your eyes physically are and what you're looking at. So yeah, let's do. So let's do some starts together. So I guess if we could all head to the start of Icebreaker, I will count us down, and we will essentially offline race together and sort of see what times everybody has. And we will do these first 4 corners, and we will do, let's see, call it 3 laps.
Anybody else that would like to share their POV?
Is it going to be a running start or a standing start?
Standing start. Good question.
Okay.
Kill Red and
just like,
Kyrexy, would you like to share your screen? Oh, you are.
Wasn't
Excuse
I?
me. No, you are. Yep.
Yep.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
And here, while everybody gets set up, just 1 second. And a flying start, of course. We don't need to do landed.
So
I will
just what we've been doing.
Just
For
what we've been doing, but we will do a group start. So I'll count us down, and we will do 3 laps. We'll see. What
Hang on.
happens.
Flying start.
I'm grabbing
uh,
a razor.
Sorry, floating start, but from a stop.
Oh, okay.
Give me just 1 sec.
All right, and Razor, if you got it.
Funny, when M50 was top of the meta, I melted my longtime M50 pledge, and now the Razor's top of the meta, and I melted my longtime LX pledge.
I'm shooting as a razor.
Just a racing hipster. It doesn't matter. I just switched to that because I felt like it. You can bring whatever you want, man.
Well, the LX is faster. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
I'm always going to
Is it
love
on the MIDI track?
paced
We don't
racing.
know on the MIDI track, Kyrexy. There could be a whole new meta.
I'm assuming it is because you do hit top speed at one point.
I'm
on the
sure.
mini track.
Anything can happen.
It'll be tense, but
I still want to see you guys doing time trials at those Krugers with the wings folded.
Yeah.
When Steve was talking about that earlier, I was like, this is the kind of thing that ruins the meta for all time trialing racers permanently.
I think, was it, oh god, New Babbage City Tour Stanton Cup Round 3? I did get about an extra second ahead going into that first break-in snake by keeping my landing gear up through that pitch turn because I was getting less drag and I could keep a higher speed. It was super annoying to toggle gear up and down, but it did get me about a second for that first turn. Alrighty.
Wait,
I
so
got
does gear down
pretty
just
cheap right now.
remove your aerodynamic resistance? Just
No, but for the Krugers, because it folds your wings, you can maintain a slightly higher speed in a turn
Yeah.
because you're getting a little less drag from it. But it is such a pain to toggle.
oh my god! Don't
and
make me do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Lagos heard that earlier. He would normally be screaming about things like that. He doesn't like things that force him to do stuff that's gonna suck.
No, and yeah, it's. I agree. Sometimes, yeah, the meta can degenerate if there's things that are annoying to do but take longer. Okay, so here's the start I'm going to play. This is what we would play in a live race. So you're going to hear 3 boops and a beep, and then you go on the beep, and we will do 3 laps. So I'll play it as a test, and the time between the first 3 boops and the beep is randomized. So for example, you might hear this, right? Or you might hear this. All right, so everybody ready? We'll do 3 laps.
Good job,
So we
Ziggy.
got Kyrexy already up the climb. Very nice.
Also, my controls aren't locked when we start.
I'm sorry, I should have mini track. Apologize.
Is
that's
it
something my muscle memory
including
kicks
the
in.
first one of Matterhorn, or not including the first
No,
one of
it's
Matterhorn?
just
Okay.
this.
Hey, Killred, it's the mini track, buddy. You're not supposed to go all the way around.
Oh, whoopsie.
Sorry, my muscle memory does that too. I've done that before.
Too
And
funny.
then call out when you're done with your 3 laps.
He's trying to break his 1 minute maze. You
I
know, the
gotta
man's
say,
hooked.
yeah, you're doing great there. You're super fast, man.
And the other thing to do is you can, when you launch, hit your stopwatch as well, and that can help you time it.
Done.
You'll do that next time. Nice.
Done.
Nice work.
And pitch down a little.
Said done, but my mic was muted. That doesn't help.
3 laps. Right?
3
The
laps,
race-
yep.
Okay.
The race tractor counts my laps for me, right? That's how XGR
That's
works?
right.
Sure,
Got
keep
it.
going,
Cool.
Saber.
Yeah.
Keep going,
okay,
Saber.
3 more, right?
You're
Keep
still
going,
That was my
Saber.
first one.
Alright.
Got it.
Here,
Got it.
let's line up again, and I'll actually start my timer this time. But then yeah, and if you hit your own stopwatch bind, you'll be able to see what your own 3 lap time is. So then that'll help us. That'll help you gauge. All right, so let's line up again, and I will give us another start.
Hopefully this time I won't crash into anything.
That's what I say every race.
I'll make
I told you
the. I'll use my 1 credit now to do a plead. Can't wait for Arena Commander private matches, so we can do this.
Private
proper.
lobbies, yep.
Yes.
One thing also I should mention, if everybody put your full power to engines, it's an easy thing to forget after you respawn.
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
F6? I think I
Hold
see most
F6.
people with that.
Press and
Thank
hold
you for
it.
reminding me. I had forgotten that.
Every single time you respawn, put it on a keybind that's easy to reach if you spend a lot of
Yeah,
time.
I've heard some
reaching there.
people actually bind it and the same thing to boost. So every time they boost,
Yes.
just in case, it'll do that. That's
That's
super
smart.
great. That
Yeah,
was
I
a
love
big
that.
brain
I-
idea. I forget who had that.
That's one for your
I have
pre-flight.
2.
Yeah,
I have
just
2
go-
profiles. One for racing and one for general use. And the racing one, yeah, my boost is full engines.
That's smart.
Just for a moment, then, muting the Discord just to say again hello and welcome. Thank you for joining. It's great to see 36 of you enjoying the class hosted by SteveCC. You're watching one of his beginner classes over at XGR. I think we're just watching the second race start. And if you're curious about this, well, you see our Discord in the left bottom of the screen. you're more than welcome to come join. It's an open community. Everybody is welcome to enjoy these classes and the races. So yeah, come check it out if you're interested. And thank you so much for tuning.
Fuck.
I need to remember I'm not going into Matterhorn.
Leaders on second lap. Kill Redbeard and Kyrexy both heading up the climb together. Jork heading up the climb. Saber heading up the climb. Kyrexy making the final turn. Just edging out Kill Redbeard. All right, leaders on lap 3. Kyrexy and Kill Redbeard neck and neck up the climb.
Finished.
Finish.
All right, that was a 102 and then a 104 for Kill Redbeard.
Nice. Done here.
Looks like we've got 119 for Jork and 122 for Ziggy
That's the full.
Slow as hell on that one.
So I just wanted to give as a tip again, if you're doing the oversteering with your crosshair, if you feel like it's not working, it's because you're forgetting that you'll have to cancel that momentum, right? Like when you've oversteered, you got to bring your crosshair back again. So that will mean that you're pulling on the stick and then likely you're pushing down again a little bit on the stick to get your crosshair back on the TVI. I still think everybody's TVI is a little lazy. Like you can turn tighter if you properly overturn and then push back. And it'll feel like a snap. It's almost counterintuitive, but
Yep. I think there's one thing I know Jork you've said is
good job.
Yep.
My problem is I'm
Yeah.
constantly pointed at the bottom of the bottom of the hill, and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, do I fly into the hill now? What do I do?
Well, in the end, I think what'll happen is like we told you to roll and keep rolled, but most likely as you get faster and faster, you're going to end up doing that turn not entirely rolled, but maybe 45 degree or 50 degree because that pitch up is coming up straight after. So you gotta just find out exactly how rolled you need to be, but likely you just need to end up slightly less rolled.
If I do it at 45 degrees, I'm like,
Yeah, that's yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I'd say one thing. So as you're coming around the bottom of the hill, you could sort of think, like you always want to be pitching, I guess, perpendicular to the way you're turning, if that makes sense. So, but if you're coming at it from the bottom, you might actually be almost like curving your pitch up the hill, if that makes sense. And again, this is something. See if I can figure out how to describe it.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah, sometimes it can be hard to explain this stuff, but I'm like, I don't know, my muscles just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies, let me figure this out. So, okay, so if I'm coming into that first turn in Icebreaker. Yeah, there's always, I'm adding like a little bit of roll in my pitch.
We can't see your stream. We're watching
yeah, thank you.
Ourselves.
Watching everybody. So yeah, just sort of thinking about and then Jork, I need to pick your brain to get those inputs displaying on my screen for the next time I do class. I think.
You want me to fly or something?
No, you have the input display on screen. I need to.
I do.
Need to get that set up for myself as well. So I'll bug you later to figure.
Oh
it out.
yeah. It's really good. I wish everyone used that, like, for other people to learn from. Not from me, but from the fast people.
Yeah, it was helpful when it was on a website, I guess.
Teal.
Well,
yeah.
Teal, yeah, and then it got shut down. So you have to run a local copy, I think, right?
You don't have to. There's a new website, but probably safer to run local.
So yeah, one thing I'm giving just a little bit of roll through the pitch. So I'm kind of like bending. Yeah, so I think that might be it. That we didn't mention before, Ziggy, is adding just a little bit of roll as you pitch up, or at least that's what I do.
Kyrexy, would you like to show it off, that first turn into the climb?
Sure. See if I can actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fast.
Yeah, didn't you Don't you just roll a tiny bit like in the first turn, Steve? I don't even really think about it, but like, I think it's just how you come out of the first.
Over
Yeah.
it's done. Bam! Did you see that? That was beautiful.
Correct, clearly doing something I'm not, because they're at the top of the hill when I'm still turning around the bottom.
Let me see your streams. I haven't been watching yours.
You just there's
show me your
quite a
line.
bit of pitch down right after that turn that you have to do in order to get it
Are
back
you-
on.
Like,
I'm gonna
snap.
just guess.
Yeah, that
not
snap,
having
that
watched it.
pitch back down. Yep.
I'm guessing it's a yaw.
Like
And
an
it's
elastic
also
band.
combined with heavy up thrust right at the same time, which is a lot easier to do in the Razor than it is in the P52. But
It's that
Ziggy, I'm
snap
watching.
is just so important because it'll allow you to basically retain speed instead of continuing to bleed it and waiting for the TVI to catch up.
So you
So
kind of
You're
want
really,
to have, like,
you're
an
really,
elastic
really
band.
wide in the turn, and you're not using afterburner at all. So you
It's-
can come onto the boost sooner, and you can take that turn because you're slow. So boost off the line, and then you'll come into the turn faster. But right off the line, like Kyrexi's
now.
boosting when Kyrexi's
Yeah.
boosting, because if you're at a standstill and you want to go, you want to use at least a little bit of boost there. So you're gonna boost off the line, and you're gonna boost out of this turn up the climb too.
Yeah,
Yep.
the turn exit is a really great place to use boost, especially if you can
Boost,
carry
boost,
that
boost.
boost through carry that boost through a straight, right? Because if you think about it, if you boost a whole bunch and then immediately air brake into a turn, you're almost kind of wasting that extra speed
Too high.
you got.
Too high. Too high.
Yeah.
But yeah, that looks
The-
better.
Yeah.
the boost usage will really help you snap to TVI as well.
Yeah,
Jeez,
because it like almost
jeez.
doubles your up thrust. So that's
Back in
definitely the turn exit.
317, I think it was, I used to joke that the P72 boost was a get out of jail free card. Because you could get yourself into trouble and you're about to crash, but you could completely avoid almost any crash
Rip it,
just
Ziggy.
by pitching and boosting.
I'm watching.
We've got
Watch it.
Shaolino
Yep.
as well in chat saying, "Oh, now I get
Just
the
keep
snap."
ripping it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much more aggressive entry to that. You can you're doing like 3 movements, you can roll over and start that turn all in one. Just as soon as you leave the line, roll over, and as soon as you get to the turn, you can start pulling up. I feel like a lot of this stuff is just a thing you're doing because you're not used to the standing start. I bet you if you come through here on a flying lap,
Yeah.
it's faster. Closer to, say, Kyrexi's time. Yep, roll.
and there's almost
Nice, very nice apex.
Yep.
Good stuff.
you almost can't roll too early with a lot of these turns. I mean, it depends with certain things and certain ships, but generally rolling earlier gives you more room to figure out when you want to start pitching. So you could almost even just start on the line rolled, and you can actually, this is something I didn't mention before, space brake is helpful to keep you floating in place at a start when you're decoupled.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
as soon as you can actually hold space brake and hold all of your inputs, and as soon as you hear go, just release space brake and you'll launch.
I don't
That's
think
good.
you
So-
really need to be right side up anywhere on this track in a Razor.
Yeah.
You can yaw a tiny bit in
Agreed.
a Razor and just do the whole
So
thing.
one thing I'm noticing, Ziggy,
Agreed.
is that as you're doing the turn, your TVI is still like low pointed at the hill. So I think that's part of it. As you come out of the turn and the TVI is already kind of pointed at the hill. So if we can get your TVI already pointed up the hill by the time you exit, then you won't have to correct it as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, way better, way
Yeah.
better. See,
Oh,
it was
okay.
basically already up the mountain. So then all you would need to do is just pitch up a little more. It's almost like the path your TVI is following is going to put it exactly where you want it.
Yeah.
So you just have to hold your pitch a little longer, and then you can
Fly the
pitch back.
TVI.
I was gonna
Exactly,
say, right?
yeah.
Like you're the
Fly the
chevron.
TVI.
dude.
Yeah.
I want that on a shirt.
Fly the
Speedweed,
TVI.
are you
man.
listening? Yeah,
Yep,
so you're
see, and
struggling
because
yeah.
that was a little low. Yeah, you had to correct. So yeah, we felt it that last time.
Is the last checkpoint before the grid, that's still a thing you have to fly through, right?
Still
Yes,
a thing on the mini track. One of these days I'll put this mini track on SCR too.
Yeah, I was
love that.
definitely
Yeah.
doing it wrong when we were watching the streams. I was running a longer track. I was like, why the fuck are Redbird and Kyrexi getting like 5 seconds per lap on? It was awful.
In the meantime, we still have our formation flyers flying around New Babbage, and somebody that isn't actually participating in the formation flight spotted them and made a screenshot.
Nice.
Said,
Yeah.
found you guys, and you just see a whole bunch of MPUVs with their lights on. It's so cool.
Nice.
All right, let's do one more of these starts, and I think we can probably call it, because I usually like to keep these to about 2 hours. Yeah, let's head to the line. Let's do. Should we do 5 laps?
5 laps.
Five.
That's how to count.
Well, that's a lot of thinking.
No, let's do. Okay, let's do 3.
Just muting the Discord down one more time for just a moment. Looks like we're going to go into a final race with these guys. And I just wanted to ask you to help me surprise Data Machine. I would like to raid his formation flying stream just after this race. So if you'll stick with us for a minute, we'll watch this race, and then we'll do a raid on Data Machine. Appreciate that.
That P50 down, P52 down, Kyrexy.
This is not me.
No, it's Lagos.
Are you still
Lagos?
listening?
You're.
It's me.
Oh no, I was just making a joke. Yeah, Kyrexy's not a student anymore. Congrats, Kyrexy.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
Ranked up.
Good job.
Woo!
Yeah, and as a reminder, every time you do a student class, it'll rank you eventually up all the way up to rookie. Each student class. All right, everybody ready? Let's give it some boops.
Oops. Fast one.
Any weird departures from the ground with my gear? Something's off.
All right, Kyrexy up the line. Lagos just behind.
Shit.
Yep, Lagos just
Power
edges out
triangle.
Kyrexy to the start. We've got Saber at the start, starting lap 2.
Oh man,
Jork
I
and
just
Ziggy
lost
2
this.
starting lap 2.
Good job, guys.
Good racing, everybody. Leader starting lap 2.
I want to say Jork is also snapping the TVI really
floor.
well.
Thank you. Oh shit. Oh, there it is.
My
Commentator's
fault. My
curse.
fault.
You saw that. I started
Like
forgetting
Lagos over the line on lap 3.
Oh,
forgetting to set my
That's 3, I
power
think.
triangle.
Yep, that's 3.
Okay, cool.
Ziggy, for you, you're getting there, man. It's just going to take some practice. Just keep on doing it, and
That's it.
you'll find
See
the moment
time.
where the TVI gets into the right spot.
But I think you felt it. You've done it a number of times, so I think that's
Yeah.
now it'll
Yep.
be in your brain. So yeah, it's looking good.
Time
It's
adds up.
all about seat time now. Once you get the fundamentals down.
You're just forgetting to pitch back a little bit towards the TVI there on the exit, but for the rest, it's gorgeous. Oops.
Sorry, I was listening to you and not looking where I was going.
Nice, sweet voice. Lulls you
No,
into
it's
a
so-
mistake.
So
Black
musical.
Maze is hypnotizing.
So
It's
musical. It's a siren song sometimes, I think.
That's why we kick him out of the voice chat when he's commentating. Otherwise, it'll lull us into crashes.
Hey Steve, you said that the P52 boosted was 490 up to 520 with the gear down.
That was just at that one altitude on Winner's Circle. So speed depends on basically your altitude as well. So you basically just have to compare it at like the exact same altitude on the same planet. And part of it also, it's not necessarily just raw speed. It can also be turn rate, right? Because you might be getting just a little bit like a higher speed, but a lower turn rate when you have your wings up.
Oh, wait a minute. There's a mound there, isn't there?
Kind of hard to ignore them.
But it looks like I think folks are in the Razor getting about 20 seconds on the mini track, so 20 to 25. So yeah, it's definitely a good practice one to shoot for. I'll definitely throw this on SCR at some point.
Hey Steve, we're going to raid Data Machine. Do you have any final words for everybody watching?
No final. Or I guess there's I think one last topic that I wanted to hit, and I think we can call it, and it's basically time trials versus live races. So pretty much everything we've been doing right now doing, time trial practice, turn practice, one thing is that there's a whole lot extra that goes into kind of like live racing with other folks, because you are sharing a track. You need awareness of where everybody else is. And for example, if you have two very fast people on the same time trial line, they will crash into each other on turn one. So one thing is as you practice your sort of like time trial and racing by yourself skills, that's like they're necessary, but then once you start racing with other people, there's just a whole different set of kind of skills and things you'll need to pick up with live racing. So if you want to do a live race, get as much live race practice as you can with other people. There's often folks in XGR hanging out on voice. Crash into other people, figure out what you need to do to survive, and remember that basically if you can make it to the end, if it's something with points or scoring, you'll probably do better than if you're not going to win the race on turn one, is I guess an old phrase that people use. But you can lose it on turn one, and probably for a whole bunch of other people too. So yeah, it's a different skill set. It takes practice. So the more live racing practice you can get, the better. Even if you think you're slow or you're new, you will learn so many things, even just the nerves. Your heart rate probably won't be higher than the first time you're racing with other people off the line. So yeah,
And
more
the
practice is
sweat.
better.
My heart rate is higher than my ship can go.
Yep, you'll have to figure out how you can start, wiping down your stick after every race and everything. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Come out and join us. You'll learn a lot. And yeah, great racing, everybody, today in class. Anybody have any final questions?
Thanks.
What is Kyrexy doing?
I'm just
Where are you?
All right, with that, I'll just thank Steve for hosting a class. I threw him a curveball today. He didn't know we were going to stream this, but it was really nice to sit into the class. And I think a lot of you were enjoying it too. So thank you. And again, check out discord.gg/XGR. I am typing in /rate data machine. Here we go. Check out his formation flying and join in if you like. Hey, Data Machine.
Hey, DJ Button's in my chat.
Hey,
Hey,
Data.
man, what's going on?
We're
Hello,
rating you
DJ
with
Button.
the party of 28. We've just finished the racing class, so they're all yours.
Oh, nice. We just
Hello, everyone.
transitioned to the 85X, and man, this thing flies pretty well with no strafe up.
Oh, I'm not surprised it does. What
It
does that
actually has a gentle climb to it. At
What does
full
that
speed.
mean, not flying with strafe up? For those that don't know.
I mean, no vert input. So we're flying with just main speed and then controlling altitude